So, is the woohoo on the...
know you are in charge of that.
But that was legend, man.
Yes, but that was such a power chat.
Yes,
Hey.
it was insane. But like you said, from like 2 months ago when Gareth sent us that clip, like to him being on our podcast, but how flippin' amazing is that?
But you need to fucking pinch yourself, you know what I mean? Hey,
Unbelievable. And what a flippin' kiff oak. His energy was like great on now, like so good.
Yeah, but I totally agree with you.
And how long have you had that shrine of me in your lounge there?
Yes, I've been sick of watching this thing, man. It's like every time we're on, and I have to look at the two faces there with glasses.
Classic, yeah. So,
okay.
Yes, you're in your car.
What's up? I'm in my car, bro. I ran late in a meeting. The CEO of Prada is in South Africa, and they asked to meet. Oh, and I was supposed to fucking be home already. So now I've stopped on the side of the road in Sandton. I actually was driving around for the last 10 minutes looking for signal that could be brilliant. Oh, shit. And I've got it now. So
yes, you're a gem.
There you go. I'm ready.
Hey, bud, do you want to get home first? I mean, we don't mind waiting for you, bud.
Are you okay with that?
Yeah, totally. How long will you be?
I'll be 10 minutes,
yeah,
10,
cool.
15 minutes.
Yeah, bud, take your time,
brilliant.
man. That's much better for us.
Ah, that's great. Okay, wonderful. Okay, I'll be back to you just now.
All right, buddy. Cheers, man.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Cheers.
All right, John.
Ciao, bye-bye.
Bye.
Quite dramatic and, I don't know. So anyway, I couldn't get out of there. There was like 7 or 8 people and a lot of like influencers in South Africa. So I was like, time's running out. I only in my diary for an hour. But my apologies.
No worries at all, man.
A man in demand, you know, that's how it works sometimes, yeah.
What a lucky life I live. I'm so happy with it.
That's so awesome, bud. That's really cool, man.
Yes, we're super grateful to have you on, man. It's flipping awesome, bud.
Thank you. Who is Sean? Sean the Knob's friend. Okay, is that you?
That's me, but that's Gareth. Yeah.
You know, I always have such a laugh with Sean. So I phone him. I'm like, no, he phones me. He's like telling me about you and like what's happened and congratulations for semi-retiring on your Elite. And so he says to me, yeah, I'm on the show in 2 weeks' time. So I said to him, oh, so it's not such a big show.
Classic. Yes, he's such a good boy, eh? What a great man.
Yeah. He's a lach. He's like a non-stop fucking politically incorrect in every fucking way.
Totally, man. Totally. That's why we love him, because he just crosses that line all the time.
Yes, all the time. And so you went. I saw pictures of Croatia.
Yeah.
And, guys in Croatia. So, yeah, wow, man, it looked incredible.
Yes, it was so much fun, man. I know you like to party as well, and it was flipping. Yeah, it was such a good party, ultra, like amazing.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I live for those. I mean, I graph like a mofo, but then when it's time to jaw, I'm not shy.
That's good
classic, but cool, man.
I think that balance is vital, actually, you know.
But absolutely.
Trying to get the light right here.
That's perfect. You know what I mean? Especially, and we want to obviously focus in on the book, because the book is amazing. I actually finished it this morning. Like, I ate it up, but I seriously ate it up.
Thank you.
Really,
thank you. Thank you so
book.
much.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, record. Woo! Gareth, my boy, how's it going?
Great, guys, my man. Very, very well, thanks. And how about you, bud?
Yes, I'm pretty good, thanks. It's been a good day.
Yes, awesome day, man. Awesome day. I'm really excited to speak to you about our chat with John.
Oh, me too. We had such a great chat with John Sanei, and he's just unbelievably inspiring. And, I'd love to have a discussion with you now about some of the things we discussed with him and some of the topics we touched on during the conversation with him. And there honestly were so many things we could discuss now together, after the chat with John. But, some of the things that stood out for us were this guy had had it all. He had the life. He was living this lush life in Joburg, and he was, he was running a number of restaurants. He was, they were all like doing really well, and he was basically, he just couldn't spend his money, and he went from that sort of lifestyle to basically losing it all. Well, literally losing it all and being in some serious trouble and debt. And this guy's, he went to the depths of how bad it can be, and somehow he actually managed to come out of that. And that must take a really special person. Hey, Gareth?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really hard to even comprehend like what his mindset was, going from having everything to absolutely nothing. And it takes definitely a special type of person to overcome that. I think that self-awareness is really key, and also, I don't know, like having some sort of plan to deal with, the situation you're in, and then steps to get out of it. And but you have to put in the hard work. And it was really, really interesting. Like there was lots of things that he did. And, one of them was just finding, I guess, inspiration from other people and other sources, and, watching YouTube videos and TED Talks and listening to podcasts. And I think that then gave him the fire, so he kind of realized what he was good at, and then got not a lucky break, but a break by some friends that needed help within the restaurant industry. And that was his kind of foot in the door again for him to get the momentum going. But yeah, I mean, the mindset is a really, really tough one. You need to be a certain type of person, I think, to overcome that. What are your thoughts on it, Craig?
Yeah. Jeez, I totally agree. And what he did there as well, he offered his help, like you said, and he basically just helped this other restaurant out. And then through that, by helping someone else, he realized, wow, I do have some self-worth. I have learned some stuff along the way, and just shows you sometimes when you start to give, you start to receive as well, and I think he like totally lived that out, and he just started, his journey took him on this path to sort of understanding that, business and making money is not all about this macho male sort of energy that he had sort of started his life with, or his business life with. But he started to embrace that more sort of emotional intelligence, and start to deal with people and understand people and care. And things started to change when he started to do more of that. And that's pretty cool, I reckon, as well.
Yeah, extremely cool. And I think in this day and age, it's such an important trait to have, to be in touch with your feminine side. And I think he calls it feminine consciousness. So there's guys, I guess, and I don't know, maybe girls as well, that struggle with the mature masculine kind of mindset and way of dealing with things, which honestly probably most of the time just gets people upset or gets their back up. And because, they're just probably too aggressive when it comes to dealing with certain situations. And you need to be more compassionate and understanding of other people's views. And I think that it's such an important trait for people to add, I guess, to their characters, to consider where people are coming from.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So he used a lot of different sort of tools to get him through those tough times, but he also really started to go deep into certain subjects, and he started to have a deeper understanding of like the future, of how things are going in the future, and where he was at, and where his future lay. And so this guy is known, he calls himself a Trenovator. What does that really mean?
So as far as I know, it's like a trend specialist and strategist, something along those lines, so pretty much someone, I guess, who's keeping an eye out on what is going on in the future, and then I guess conversing that in language that people like you and I can understand, but then at the same time, like it's a motivational thing, so getting us excited about the opportunities that are coming.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing he does super well. Is like, I was so pumped after this chat with him, just because he is an super optimistic, but he has a plan, and there are ways to make a plan in any sort of climate that the financial climate that the world is in, or you're in. There's always a way to make a plan, and just be aware of being aware of your surrounds, being aware of the people you surround yourself with, and then and you can always make things happen. And I think that's something I really took from that chat with him as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I guess the last thing is that what was really inspiring for me as well was his book, What's Your Moonshot? And wow, like seriously, so many tools in that book, so much great information. And I find that I ate that book up literally in a day. And I think if anyone has the opportunity to get their hands on it, it's well worth a buy.
Totally agree.
Cool, man. So yeah, let's hear what it's like for John Sanei to be ridiculously human. Cool stuff. All right, so what we're going to do? We'll go like basically 1, 2, 3 record, okay, and then we all just hit record at the same time.
Okay.
Cool, man. All right, so Craig, you ready, my man?
Ready, guys? Ready to roll?
Okay. 1, 2, 3, record. Oh, hang on 1 second. Wait, error. Am I changing the audio host? What?
Talk about an anti-climax.
What's going on? Yeah.
Yes, you're just going there for a
sorry.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Cool. John, welcome to the Ridiculously Human podcast. It's really, really great to have you on here. Thank you so much for joining, man.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. I've loved the energy of the tone of your emails, just everything you guys are putting out is very much in line with what I'm at. So it's an absolute pleasure. Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Cool, my man. And,
thanks so much, John.
So I want to make sure I get this right. It's Sanei, is that right?
Yes, Sanei.
Okay, cool. Because
nice.
Well done.
I was like saying so many different things, like to myself, and then I watched the keynote that you gave, and you actually say like how to pronounce your surname, and I'm like, okay, cool, I got it now.
Thank you for doing the research. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries, man. So bud, so I guess just to like give a little bit of context to this, I actually got introduced to you probably it was a very short time ago, like 2 months ago. One of my friends sent me a message on LinkedIn. He said, you've got to watch this guy, and it was obviously of you, and you had just you were currently in the States at the Singularity University, and you'd posted one of your daily vlogs, and ever since that day I've just been kind of in awe of everything you have to say. So thanks for putting everything that you do out there, and it's really a great energy and a great message that you share. It means a lot to myself and to so many people. I'm sure you're aware of that.
Well, that's very kind of you, and thank you very much. I find that by sharing it, especially on a live video, which is very different to a recorded video, if you've done either one of them, you'll realize the energy is very different. But when you do it on a live video, what you're able to do is unpack in a little bit of a pressure cooker situation, because it's live, unpack your learnings. And once you've been able to put them into that context, you actually learn them yourself a lot better. So on a very selfish level, they really help me contextualize what I've learned so I can get it out. So my absolute pleasure, but it's also really great for me to do it.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And the cool thing was, it's amazing how small the world is, because I was doing my research on you and a little bit of, say, stalking maybe, like on Instagram. And, all of a sudden...
As Gareth does, you know.
Yeah, as I do, a picture pops up with you and, our friend Stacy. And then I got in touch there. I'm like, Flip, how do you know John? And she's like, oh, I've known him forever. He's like such a good friend of mine or whatever. So it's, it always helps having that connection with somebody. So that's really cool. And John, part of the podcast is we love to get to know people, right? And we know a lot about you through the research we've done, but we'd love our guests to know a little bit about you as well. So, if you don't mind just sort of telling us where it all begins for you. You're a little kid, and your parents are from Persia, if I'm right.
That's right. Yeah.
And they come to South Africa, and how does it all begin?
So my mom and dad got married in the 70s, and back then they are still Baha'is. They follow a religion called the Baha'i faith. And in the 70s, there was this big sort of move around young couples to move around the world to help spread the religion. And so in the mid-70s, I was in my mom's tummy, and my mom and dad got adventurous and moved to Swaziland. I think my dad was running away from my mom and dad's parents. But anyway, that's a whole other story. But they moved to Swaziland. I was born in Swaziland and began my journey as an African child with Persian heritage, which is not very commonplace. There's not many of this packet of licorice, all sorts combination around here. So I began the journey. My mom and dad got divorced at 8 years old when I was 8. And I became the man of the house at 8 years old, and was with my mother, my brother and I from a very young age. And that kind of got my entrepreneurial spirit really going, because we were financially challenged from a very young age. And I remember my mom not being able to afford to buy us a yo-yo. And it was R2.25 a yo-yo, and she couldn't afford to buy both of us a yo-yo. And it broke me. I mean, it broke me, and it made me extremely angry. And I think I was 9, and I started my first job at 13. I was packing bags at a spa, and that became my first job, and my entrepreneurial spirit really started driving from a very young age. And I was really successful, really young, and lived in Johannesburg, London, and Cape Town, and then back to Joburg. And throughout this period of time, I was just owning a lot of my own businesses, making a lot of money, losing a lot of money, until I ultimately lost everything when I was 30, after I've made a whole bunch of money in my early 20s. So the sort of trajectory begins from me being having to fend for myself from a very young age, and really getting to grips with being an adult from a very young age.
Yes, so you've actually lived a few lives in one already, and at a young age. You've done a lot and experienced a lot, so a lot of lessons learned, obviously. But just taking it back, what age did you move to Joburg then from Swaziland?
So we, at 13 or 12, I moved to, 11. 11, I moved to Joburg, and I lived in Joburg until I was 20. And then I moved to London till I was 23, and then Cape Town till I was 25, and then Joburg again. So I was in between those three sort of places quite a bit.
And
what was your...
You go, Craig.
No, hey, go ahead.
Yeah, whereabouts in Joburg did you go to school?
Sandringham High School. I lived in Eden Vale, the Vale where the chicks
The Vale.
The Vale, what? I BMX'd up and down from Rubik Avenue. It was my hood.
So you're a real China, man.
Hey, China. Hey, Butts. I'm actually a Butt.
Hey, Butt. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, what was your first little business? You said you were a businessman from a young age. Like, where did you sort of dabble first in the businessman scene?
So, not having a father that was watching anything that I was doing, and my mother was working 2 jobs trying to keep food on the table, as the saying goes. I became one of the top steroid dealers in Joburg.
Yes, good job.
Yeah,
there's a lot of money in that with the breakers there.
I tell you what, exactly. I had a market that was wide and far, everybody was taking steroids. And I remember at 16 years old, I met the guy who brought the major shipment of steroids into South Africa. And I became friends with him. And I didn't know what he did initially. And then we got chatting, and he took me to his home, and he had a garage full of Dynabol and Decadurabolin and testosterone and sustenance and all sorts of steroids.
Winstrol.
And Winstrol, yeah. And my first business was making thousands of rands, selling steroids to even Mr. South Africa. Gary Bennett was buying steroids from me at that stage. And I remember I bought my first car when I was 17 with my own money.
Yes.
And my mom said to me, wow, they pay you a lot as an instructor at Health and Racket, eh? Yeah, they do. But I always had a job like an instructor as a showpiece. But I had these sort of pretty dodgy businesses going on undercurrent. And coming from a single mom family, you know, you're so frustrated at the fact that you don't have money, you don't have this freedom, and you have friends who have like normal families, and the father and mother are both working, and there's a comfort in sort of finances. And I felt this frustration, so I was willing to do anything really to have the freedom. And looking back, obviously, it's not the right way to do it, but you know, I've forgiven myself, and I used to judge myself for it. But yeah, my first business was illegal, dude, and I operated like a machine, because it even got me my first job, which only lasted 2 months. The principal dealer of the Wrangler, I don't know, some car business, said to me, listen, I love the way you sold me steroids. Why don't you come sell cars for me? So I went to go sell cars for him for a couple of months. And I was just there. I was 19. So I was just messing around. And the top salesman there, I said to him, why are you driving a Hyundai and not a Grand Cherokee? He's like, no, I can't afford a Grand Cherokee. I was like, what? You're the top salesman. You can't afford a Grand Cherokee, our top selling car. I'm out of here. Cheers. And I left. That was the first and last job I ever had, actually.
Oh, that's so classic, man. Yeah. So did that lead you to going to London after that?
Yeah. So I'd finished studying, and again, I really wasn't great at studying. You know, I'm not an academic, and that's just the way I'm built. And I got frustrated with what was going on in Joburg, and I went to go live in London. I got the 2-year work visa, the famous one that all of us Sappers went on initially, and arrived in London in Heathrow Airport. My jaw literally tapping up and down with absolute nerves, not knowing what I was walking into. First time away from being a mommy's boy, and boy, was I a mommy's boy without even realizing I was a mommy's boy. And getting into London and started operating within London. You know, I was a barman and a head barman in Soho at the Pitcher and Piano for 2.5 years, and I had the best time of my life, and made good money as well. You know, we were, with the pound exchange with the rand, was a really good space, and we had the best time ever. 2.5 years of an absolute fantastic experience and memory.
Yeah, London is such a great city for that, isn't it? Like, I mean, just to meet people, especially when you're such a youngster, you're like meeting guys from all over the world, and you're like, oh my word, this is just the best.
I mean, from the Edenvale, from the village and the metropolis of Edenvale to London, I mean, it was mind-blowing. And that's where I actually started my first business, proper business, legit business, is I saw a range of shoes at the Shelley's in Covent Garden. And they were called acupuncture footwear. And I saw them and I was like, geez, those would be great. And the rave scene was still on. So I got the rights for them and went back to South Africa. And that was my first sort of job, business that started really making me money and gave me the sort of cash flow to start buying my first restaurants. And so at 24, I bought my first restaurant, and I began my sort of hospitality journey from 24 to 30. And I went on to own six restaurants, 2 retail stores, and about 30 or 40 vending machines that used to pick up watches. You know, the ones that pick up teddy bears?
Yeah.
I had the ones that picked up watches outside bottle stores and taxi ranks.
Nice.
And that was amazing. You know, early 20s, mid 20s to late 20s, I was so successful, making so much money. And I say it in my keynote, making a lot of money and mixing it with high levels of testosterone is a horrific mix.
Yes.
Horrific. It's the worst mix you can have.
But now, what made you get into the hospitality industry? Like, did you have like a thing for food, or did were you brought up with like a bit of a foodie sort of a cultural thing, or what was it?
People. People. I was a waiter from a very young age. I mean, it's why I made some of my pocket money from a very young age, and I just understood I understood people. I understood how to deal with customers really well. I understood the sort of relationship management and staff, and I just saw a brand called Primi Piatti, in early 2000, and it was such a strong brand. It was so powerful, nothing like it on the marketplace. I fell in love with the brand, and I dived in at 24, and the next time I looked up, I was 29 years old. I'd spent a good 6-7, well, that's 5 years only, 4 years, but it felt like 150 years. But yeah, I was there for 5 years grafting. I mean, you can imagine one restaurant on its own is a 6-day week, day and night scenario.
Yes.
I had 6 of them. It was nonstop. But, I learned culture, manufacturing, purchasing, sales, customer care. I learned everything underneath one umbrella under a very pressured environment where the guys who own Primi, they're hardcore guys, they're not any pushovers, and they were really putting a lot of pressure on us for many different reasons. And obviously having restaurants with queues going out the door pretty much every night, and that's what Primi was. We had pressure from so many different sides. And I learned a lot in a very short period of time, and so ultimately it was one of the best things I ever did. Besides the fact that it also declared me bankrupt, which was the ultimate sort of finale in my hospitality world adventure, which again also taught me a lot about the value of money, time, and your own self-worth, So all in all, it was a fantastic 20s. I mean, I had the best jaw ever.
Yes, it must have been super... a roller coaster, like of excitement, enjoyment, spending, learning, tiredness, like too many jam jars. I think that's what they were.
I don't really drink, so I never actually experienced the jam jars. But I definitely remember having so much money that I couldn't spend it fast enough. Every time I turned around, there's more money in my account. So I used to spend and splurge really quite comfortably, and then I can also remember not affording a cup of coffee and being embarrassed to go out with friends because I couldn't afford the meal. I've been in both.
So what do you like spend your money on when you say you've just got too much? Like what is it?
Well, I had a little mansion in Bryanston. I had a convertible sports car. I had a Breitling and a Panerai. I had overseas business class tickets. I mean, I don't know. What else do you spend? I don't know. It's a splurging on everything that you ever wish you could afford. Going into G-Star, spending 20 grand, just stuff that you only saw in movies or in music videos, but not realizing how not how ungrateful that scenario is. It's really just a dick measuring contest. It's nothing else. It's not fulfilling. It's not fulfilling at all. But while you're doing it, I mean, it's a good time. Lots of girls, lots of holidays, lots of jaws, lots of parties.
Yeah, and in Joburg, it's also like that kind of scene, isn't it? Like it's like very materialistic.
Very well. I think every emerging city in the world is, and Dubai, Beijing, Kuala Lumpur, Joburg. These cities didn't have a lot of money in the previous generations, or in Joburg, it was very like confined to the white people. Now there's this opening of like wealth and abundance. Dubai, look at Dubai. I mean, for God's sake, there's gold Lamborghinis driving out in Dubai. Who the hell needs a gold Lamborghini? But, last generation, my father was a desert camel herder. So obviously I'm going to splurge now. And if you think about where I came from, we didn't have money. My mom couldn't afford a yo-yo. Damn, was I going to splurge, And I think it's a necessary process to burn away that poverty mentality,
And so who were you jolling with? Who were the people you were hanging out with? Did you have good mates that you had already from beforehand, or had you sort of entered into a different kind of circle? Or
Yeah. No, it was the people that knew me from the restaurants, and I was, I don't know, a little bit of a hero in my own little world and mind.
Yeah.
And I had the busiest restaurants in Joburg. I mean, they were just ridiculous. And I was 26, I was young. I mean, thinking back on it now, I had at one stage 300 staff underneath me. My monthly salary bill was ridiculous. And you don't even think that you're just doing it. You think back on it now, having 10 staff freaks me out.
Yeah.
Back then, I was just like, you were like blasé to it, just running around like a crazy man, doing things, and getting along. So, my friends, you know, money, jewels, and popularity have a certain layer of friends to them, and it's much about more friends, more popularity, a lot less about quality, you know. And so
totally.
In your 20s, I think your 20s are about running and hitting your head on as many flipping pillars and posts as you can.
Yeah, totally. But you have to learn, like, you know, to sort of prepare you for the future. That's for sure. And what's your relationship with your mom like when you're going through this phase?
Wow. Well, let me unpack my relationship with my mother.
Okay, cool.
Because that's a much more detailed scenario, and it's in my new book, actually.
Oh, cool.
And I got married to the most wonderful human being, a beautiful girl, and we got divorced 4 years later. It was a very, very difficult time for me. And what had happened is that my mother relationship had caused all the turmoil in my marriage without my mom's interference. So it had nothing to do with my mother as far as interfering, but so there's a very major psychological issue happening in society on a mass scale that nobody really talks about. It's called the Madonna whore syndrome. And the Madonna whore syndrome is very much based on boys that have unrealistically close relationships with their mothers. Cultures like the Portuguese, Greek, Italian, Middle Eastern, like I am, have a relationship where the mother puts their boy on a pedestal. He's the prince of the household. He's the fat little shit that his sister and mother are cooking for and caring for, right? And that fact that I became the man of the house at 8 years old, and my mom then became my surrogate relationship partner. And so what happens when you have a Madonna in your life, like the first relationship you have with a woman, is based on this idea of respect, caring for, and loving, you know, but not having sex with. Because a Madonna you don't have sex with, you care for. And so when I met my wife, I immediately put her into the Madonna category without realizing this. I had no idea. And it was really awkward for me to have sex with my wife. It was just the very awkward thing. And I had no idea what had happened. Only post-divorce, when my mom said to me when we got divorced, said, you know, you are such a boy and you're just like your dad. And that made me snap. And I didn't speak to my mom for 8 months. And then I got asked to write an article for Longevity magazine on the modern man. And I pondered on the article so much. And I was going through such a painful period post-divorce. And I changed the article title to Unmothering the Modern Man. And I got to grips and understood that the way my mother treated me as this prince, as all Middle Eastern, Greek, Italian boys get treated by their mothers, you become petulant and expect the rest of the world to treat you like that. And so it's a very complex and dynamic relationship that we all have with our parents, and sort of very hurtful situations bring up those things for us to deal with. So I guess it's a much more complex answer than you were expecting. But yes, my relationship with my mother back then was squeaky clean. And if I think back on it now, I never took a girl home to introduce her to my mom. And if you think about it, that is so weird. But I was emotionally married to my mother still. I was her caretaker from such a young age. Could never take a girl home to introduce her to my mom. I never knew why. So weird construct. But now that I've dealt with it, it's a wonderful place to be. You know, I've actually dealt sort of suffering from something so intense and so deep within my psyche. Having dealt with it through a very painful, traumatic divorce has put me in a very powerful position to connect with who I really am, rather than have these sort of shadows lingering around me directing my life.
Yeah, I think sometimes growth happens, you know, it's probably a bit cliched, but sometimes growth happens through those tough times where you're forced to analyze the situation, think about it, and then do something about it. But by the sounds of it, you were, you know, writing articles for big publications and that kind of thing at that stage. So you'd obviously been, I guess, a kind of person that was known as someone that thinks about stuff, or a thought leader in some way already. So how did that journey start?
Oh, I think I got that from my grandfather's lineage. My grandfather was well known in his world for telling stories and poems. And the Persian, it's called Farsi, the language. Our language is called Farsi, and Rumi is Persian, and so is Farhez. There's another poet. And the Persian language, Farsi, has got very poetic connotations and very poetic stories linked inside it. And my grandfather was well known that when anybody had an issue, they would come to him and he would tell them a poem. And from the poem, he would bring the sort of the wisdom out of it. And, if I think back from a very young age, people used to come to my restaurants, used to come for that. And from a very young age, I was able to take quite complex psychological stories and issues and break them down into a way for people to understand them, and just helping myself understand them. And I said earlier on when we started the podcast, when I share and explain, I'm learning. So I'm learning through that talking. So I think I've just had that very inherently from a very young age. Also watching my grandfather do it a lot has just been, I think it's just storytelling, and that sort of breaking down complex ideas is very much in my lineage, and it's just something I've been birthed with.
Yeah, that's really cool. And it's obviously, it's something you're doing now for a career. You're storytelling, which is so it's definitely in your bones. So before we get on to that, because there's so much cool stuff we want to talk about, what is it like, right? You have all this money in the world, and then all of a sudden you're having to declare bankruptcy. Wow. I can't imagine how that must feel mentally.
Yeah, dude, I remember taking photos of my car when it was getting taken away. And I remember having to leave my home and move into my friend's second bedroom. And I remember having expensive toiletries and not being able to afford them again,
Yes.
It was an absolute demolition of my perspective and ego. At every touch point of who I was, I'd lost the meaning of who John Sanei was. In hindsight, thank God. Thank God, because it was built on a broken construct, and it needed to crack. And none of us want to go through that pain. I don't wish my worst enemy that pain. But boy, is it worth it in the long run. And boy, was it necessary. And it's I say in one of my keynotes, the bank took my business, my car, my house, and my fancy personality away in one foul swoop. And that's what happens. You can't even, if you just think of it on a very projection, energetic space, I didn't even own my name. Even my name wasn't mine anymore. And so you can understand on a confidence level where you're at, to even think that you could add value to society again. It took me a good 2 years to, just even, it was tough. It was very, very tough. And the first 2-3 years were they weren't my toughest, because my divorce was tougher. But the first 2 years was just embarrassing. It was shameful, because I was this John, and this John now kind of, he's not out, because he can't afford to be out.
Yeah.
Yes. I guess, I guess when you've, I would imagine that the reason that it's able to be taken away in one foul swoop is basically because you'd attach so much to the material side of things, I'd imagine. And how do you, and also as a storyteller, what is the story you were telling your friends and your family when, about the scenario? Like, how did you, I guess in the beginning you probably have a story for it and go like, it's going to be okay, or whatever it is. Like, what was the story you were telling people and your friends and the people around you at the time?
If I think back on it, I was raging with anger with the guys that had manipulated the bankruptcy. I was berating myself a lot around the fact that why didn't I see it coming? Why didn't I make different decisions? Why didn't I stash some of the money somewhere else? Why did I use all of it and think it was going to be all okay eventually? And the stories that I was telling my friends were all lies. Like everything was okay, and it wasn't okay. The only person that knew it wasn't okay was my mom, and who I would spend hours at a time screaming down the line. And my poor mom, with all great intention, listened to me the whole time, and she shouldn't have. She allowed me to keep regurgitating my victim mindset. There should have been a slap, both physical and figurative, a literal and a figuratively slap to slap me out of it. You know, I call it the emotional long drop of victimization. When you're swimming around in a whole lot of shit, you don't even know you're swimming around in it. You know, and you know, you need to get slapped out of it. And that wasn't happening for me. So I lied a lot, and I avoided scenarios where I had to pay for things and to interact with people and tell them any sort of truth to the story. So I kind of avoided it and sat in a bit of a depression for a couple of years.
Wow.
And like, where does it start changing? You know, because you know, from reading your story and your book, this happens for quite a while, doesn't it? You're in the States for a long time.
So what happened was, I tried 2 or 3 different ventures and they all failed, obviously, because my emotional state was so broken. And then somebody said to me, can you come and help us in our cafe? You know, and they knew me from Preemie. So they said, can you come and help us in our cafe? You know, our turnover is like plateauing. So not having any self-worth, I said, you know what, I'll come and do it for free, even though I couldn't pay rent. I just didn't know how I was going to charge for something like that. And I got to be, you know, I forgot how much I knew about restaurants. I forgot how much experience I'd gained. And within 2 months of working with them, their turnover went up 20%. Wow. And I was like, wow, I can't believe it. And all I'd really done was Google trends in health food. And the trends in health food back then were superfoods. There was no superfoods on the market yet. So we just added superfoods into the menu. And boom, 20% up. And I was like, wow, okay, hang on. I forgot that I had this sort of insight or sixth sense around it. And then I had a second restaurant, and I developed an agency called The Fresh Ingredient. And I was a hospitality consultant. And about a year into that hospitality consultant, I started helping other businesses, you know, construction businesses and IT businesses. And another 6 months into that, I started realizing I was actually following a methodology, you know. It was categorizing trends in a specific way. Then I was bringing it into culture. Then I was helping them market. So I was actually following a process. And that methodology now is called Forever Profitable. And companies like De Beers and Telesure and, I don't know, some massive organizations in South Africa are starting to use it. So it's evolved from a very, very small, tiny little cafe to started becoming a global framework.
Wow. And how do you sort of translate, I guess, the hospitality industry into something like De Beers? How does that happen? What is the link in sort of in your mind then? Or how do you?
There's always the common denominator of 2 things: a market and a human. What is your product doing in that market? And the markets I know are the mature awareness, the emerging awareness, and the less affluent markets. There's 3 markets around the world. The world is kind of demarcated into 3 markets. What's your industry doing in that market? And what is the human being in that market expecting from a brand like yours and a product like yours? And when you start dissecting those trends and categorizing and contextualizing them, you start realizing how human behavior is actually changing and determining what the trends are. And when you start looking at these needs and expectations from human beings, you start then being able to determine trends. And so what's happened now is that just like superfoods was the next sort of layering for cafes, the next layering for De Beers is not diamonds, it's luxury. And what luxury is in 3 different markets is very different. Luxury in the mature awareness market are experiences. Luxury in the emerging market, like Dubai, Beijing, and Johannesburg, is still diamonds. It's asset ownership. Luxury in the less affluent market is aspirational brands. So now what we're able to do is we have to break down De Beers' next few steps based on their product, their market, and what the consumer is actually looking for. So the commonality is always market and consumer.
Wow.
And John, so I can feel like we're heading off towards this.
Let's go back.
I just want to go. I just want to go back because the message I think is quite important for our listeners. You know, like there's lots of people that are probably in the same boat, or maybe not as extreme as you were. So you're suffering now, like you've lost all the cash, but then you've started again. There's also something else that sort of is like an awakening, maybe, and you start, I think it's you go on an ayahuasca ceremony. That sort of brings out some inner belief and things. Can you just talk a bit about that, please?
Yeah. So what happened? I remember the night I got the email at home in my Bryanston home that I'm being sued for 8.6 million rand by the franchise company, claiming that they had backtracked my franchise fees and were now suing me for future franchise fees that I had not been able to pay because of a 10-year agreement I'd signed.
Wow.
I remember thinking, that's it. It's cutting cord. This is going to be the end of the sort of lavish lifestyle that I'd built up. And I started meditating that night. That was the first night I started meditating. And what had happened is I realized I was quite unhappy when I didn't have money. I was quite unhappy when I had money because all I wanted was a little bit more. And then I was quite unhappy when I had no money. And then I thought to myself, hang on a sec, what the hell's going on here? How can I always be unhappy? There's always a striving towards something that's this invisible sort of idea that I have. And I started meditating. And I then started the sort of inward journey at about 32 years old. And I started doing workshops and listening to TED Talks and like having the same ambition and hunger that I had about business in my 20s. I started applying to spiritual life and to the inward journey of becoming a more mature human being. And through the journey over the next 6 years or 7 years, I did so many different workshops and I became a workshop junkie and couldn't get enough. I watched The Secret, that movie, The Secret. I must have watched that thing 100 times just to understand the law of attraction, because I was like, dude, this is like, and if you think about The Secret now, it's like so petty, but back then it was really groundbreaking. And I just continued this sort of ambitious spiritual journey, and I bumped into ayahuasca, and ayahuasca has categorically been the most unbelievable tool available to me and the rest of humanity to get the ability to understand our subconscious better. I think whatever we do workshop-wise, whether it's meditation or seeing a shrink or whatever it is, you're dealing with your conscious mind. Nothing gets into your subconscious, and ayahuasca is the only thing that does, or teacher plants do. And I was at an ayahuasca ceremony in 2011, the first time I drank, and the unraveling of my egotistical perspective began. And I have learned so many lessons. I've drank the holy brew of ayahuasca 40 plus times, and I now do it once a year. And I cannot recommend it highly enough. I cannot explain the deep, deep healings I have achieved for myself and for my family through the process of ayahuasca. And I can almost say that without ayahuasca, I don't think I'd be here right now, because the level of access I've gained to my purpose and my lights has very much been about unpacking and breaking through the perspective that we've learned through our lives, and nothing helps us unpack them like ayahuasca does. In fact, my publisher was like, I don't think you should put ayahuasca in your book. I said, dude, have you done ayahuasca? He said, no. I said, no, well, then you don't know how important it is for me to put it in there. And it's become such a catalyst for me to talk about it and get other people to understand about it, because I really wish everybody would take it, because I think the world would just be in a better place. In fact, I was at a KFC conference, 600 staff, and doing my keynote and Q&A at the end, and the guy says, so John, what was the point of turn? I was like, well, I didn't know I was going to speak about it here, but ayahuasca. And then for the next 15 minutes, it was a Q&A on ayahuasca at KFC. So
wow.
It reaches into the weirdest and most wonderful places.
So we can expect some ayahuasca in the next sort of bucket of wings that we buy, maybe.
The more you drink ayahuasca, the more turned off you'll be from eating any animals. It's just what happens. So you become, I became vegan for 18 months after drinking ayahuasca, and it wasn't about trying to at all. It was, you become so sensitive to an energetic vibration of something, and you realize, and I'm a dogmatic anti-animal cruelty person, and I am 1,000% against factory farming. And for me, the vibration, when you become sensitive like that to vibrations, you realize that that's tortured dead meat. There's no reason to want to encapsulate that into your being. There's zero reason. Whether you need meat or not, or whatever the case may be, find your meat somewhere else. Don't go through factory farming. So that's why for me, KFC is such a far off notion, because I believe they sell tortured animals. There's nothing else about those animals. Aren't happy by no means. And they have moved into a factory process of sentient beings put into this process of feeding us. And if we think about our lives as human beings and our consciousness growing, 150 years ago, slavery was so normal that the slaves thought it was normal. 100 years ago, women didn't vote. It was so normal that women thought it was normal. 30 years ago, there was child labor. We thought it was normal. 25 years ago, there was segregation. We thought it was normal. 20 years ago, there was apartheid. We didn't think anything was wrong. We've all woken up to the fact that all of the things I've mentioned are ridiculous. And the next thing that we're going to start realizing is that the way we're treating other sentient beings is ridiculous. It just doesn't make sense, I think it's an atrocity that we go about doing it. And what marketing has done is told us that we don't get the right amount of protein from X and Y foods. And the fact that a big piece of steak that's grilled on a billboard is supposed to be sexy means it's fucked up. I'm very passionate about it. I have a dog, and I always think to myself, this dog is so intelligent. It knows me so well. I love this thing so much. It's an animal. What's the difference between this thing and a cow? You know what I mean? So anyway, when you drink ayahuasca, some amazing things start happening. Your perspectives start changing, and you realize that we live in a very thin slither of reality. And Mother Ayahuasca gives you a very, very clear journey into your own psyche to explain to you who you are and what you're about and what the stories are that you've created for yourself and how broken they are. And it's not that she's saying you're wrong. It's just that when we are being brought up, we create memories of experiences, and those memories sit with us. And those memories are often not right. They're just not the right memory. The three of us are doing this right now. Each one of us will have a different memory of today. Is my memory right or yours or yours? I don't know. But if we are able to change those memories to become conscious rather than unconscious, we release ourselves of that sort of stuckness, of that sort of period of time, or blaming those people. So she is by far the most powerful teacher, in my perspective, on earth at the moment.
Wow, that's really, really powerful.
Yeah, and but did you like go out to South America for it, or is there places in South Africa that you find it, or how does it work?
I think globally there are more and more shamans that are traveling, having ceremonies around the world. I was very lucky, extremely lucky and privileged to have met one of the most amazing human beings who's doing it around the world. I'm not going to mention his name, but he has trained with the Peruvian people for many, many months in the jungles of Peru, and is a very solid human being, and he does it around the world. And I attend his retreats on an annual basis when he comes to Cape Town. There are a lot of dodgy shamans, and I definitely think you need to keep an eye out and see what training they've received and how of a solid human they are. They make up a lot of the environment that's been created and of the sort of sacred space that's created around the ritual and ceremony. So I have been to South America. I have done a San Pedro ceremony there, but not an ayahuasca ceremony, because I've really found somebody that's my shepherd and my guide, PhD. Oh shit! I just said his name. Through these
edit.
Edit. Keep it up, please. I don't want him to get into trouble.
No worries, we will do that, buddy.
Yeah,
no worries.
That's cool.
And so like, sorry, I'm Lank interested in it because actually I went to a ceremony when I was in Peru, and it was like just amazing, but like in the middle of the Amazon, and it was like, whoa, okay, this is really cool. But I guess for our listeners, like it's not all like, I guess, amazing. Like physically, you experience a lot of things, like kind of stuff is coming out of every orifice of your body, and you're sort of hallucinating / seeing things. Just like briefly, like how was it for you? I guess your first time.
Okay, I just want to make a quick distinction. This is not drugs.
No, of course.
Everybody who's not, no. But I think a lot of listeners need to also understand that don't categorize it into drugs. I think there's a very clear difference between drugs and teacher plants.
Totally.
Teacher plants are done with intention, ceremony, and ritual and respect. You are very quiet and by yourself. In fact, you're silent and you're journeying inwards. Drugs are to numb with no ritual, no intention, except to get out of it. So we've got to first categorize that. So I know when anybody says psychedelics, they immediately go to dancing on a dance floor in a trance party somewhere, right? So I just want to say that.
Yeah.
I pretty much cry every time. I pretty much puke every time. I purge, as you would say, not puke. And I walk away with the most incredible realizations every time. And I think it's really important to purge. It's really important to cry. And I learned that when you cry in those sort of scenarios, what you're doing is a washing away a way of thinking that you've had. So as you start learning new things, you cry, and it's like washing away a perspective, washing away a perspective. And ayahuasca once told me that whatever brings up your purge, you must be grateful, whether it's food poisoning, mountaineering, or I don't know, whatever it is. That purge is giving your body the ability to get rid of something that's been stuck inside your body for far too long. And the sort of violent movement of that is really getting you a real privilege to want to get rid of it out of your system. So I invite those purges as quickly as possible because I know what they're doing for me long term.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. And just something that you touched on just now, like, so you do a talk at KFC, right? But are you I don't know if you're still vegan or vegetarian or not now, but how does that kind of, I guess, fit in with your philosophy? You know what I mean?
Great question.
Do you go there and you
Great question.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I grappled through this, right? And I grappled with alcohol and cigarette companies. I said, I'm not helping those. And then De Beers called me. And I was like, oh, shit. Now what? Because this is kind of in the same category, you know? And I realized that when I left De Beers, I was a Trojan horse of consciousness. I had brought in a new perspective for them to slowly move towards another business model. And when KFC called me, I've now taken on a new stance of saying, I've brought all this learnings inside my head. I should be taking it to the people that need it the most, not the people that need it the least. And so a KFC person who's totally unaware of the scenario, maybe if I can get 5 of them to go and drink ayahuasca, they will move their focus away from what they're doing there and move on to something else. So I think the Trojan horse analogy has become very clear in my head, where I can go in now and I can really just shine a light on what the actions and the measurement factors should be compared to what they are. And I have this new keynote called Conscious Capitalism. And I mock shareholders because if you think about it, what most businesses have is a schizophrenic personality. And all businesses have it. So the one side, the personality of the businesses, we have these values, these visions, these missions. We're all about collaboration, teamwork, innovation, blah, 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 bullshit. And then what happens is that when you don't reach your quarterly targets, you become a horny teenage boy and get out there and fuck anything you can to bring turnover in.
Yeah.
And so the employee says, hang on a second, I thought we're all about collaboration and teamwork. Yeah, shut up. When you reach your targets, we're all about that. When we don't reach your targets, you're all about that. And so when I'm saying this in a keynote, people are like, shit, that's us. Yeah. I'm like, you realize that you're acting like a horny teenage boy and not like an elegant business person. And ladies, let me ask you a question. When you go into a nightclub and you see that guy that's got those raging hormones, what do? You energetically become turned off by him. You're like,
run the other way.
You run the other way. I said, what do you think your customers are doing when you start bringing this energy of desperation because some faceless shareholder has made it the rule? The rule has to break. And this is what innovation is about. Innovation is not about a product or service. It's an institutional, political innovation we require to start measuring new things. Because the way we're going right now, there's going to be no fucking earth left. I mean, it's going to be fucking killing animals because it makes more money. It's like, what the fuck's going on? Because I know that these people haven't drank ayahuasca. Because when you drink ayahuasca, I promise you, it's a rejig of your whole perspective on what's important and what's not important. And you're talking to a guy that had a convertible sports car that now rides a bicycle. And I'm making much more money now than I ever did then. the constructs have changed.
So it's a big idea of extrinsic versus intrinsic, I guess, as well. And I think that's, I guess, what the teacher plants is intrinsic versus drugs and sort of that kind of thing is all extrinsic. And I think that's a big distinction there. Stuff has to come from the inside out, and that's when real change starts to happen. And that's why the Trojan horse is so good, because from the inside out, you can get in and then work your way out. So you've had some amazing teachers, like the plant teachers, and you've had some incredible shaman, but you've also had some others. You've had a chat to Sangoma, and also a guy named Joe Dispenza. I think is pretty interesting. How have these people influenced your sort of journey of discovery and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think that when you're on the search, you have many teachers. And some of them you don't see them, and they're in the magic realm. And some of them are people that have brought some of that magic with them back to this space and time. And that's what a Sangoma is. Sangoma is just another type of shaman that is the bridge between the other world and this world, bringing that sort of wisdom into this world. And the Sangoma has taught me many, many things. And the type of personality I am, and I don't expect every person to be like this, but I am 100% an optimist. I can't help it. I've always been like this. And there's people that are just 100% skeptics. And one of my best friends and business partner in most of my businesses, he's a 100% skeptic. He doesn't trust anybody, but together we make a great team, right? And there's a great Roald Dahl line that says, those who don't believe in magic never find it. And for me, it's about, I want to believe the invisible, and I want to use it as a placebo effect. Why not? If it is a placebo effect, why not then use it? And then I guess, I'm not too fussed about pride. If I look like a fool, I'm okay with it. I'll get up and rub off and go. People that are quite skeptical by nature are very, very clear about pride being right up there as a sort of. So Dr. Joe Dispenza, another person. Dr. Wayne Dyer, another person. And there are many of them. But Dr. Joe Dispenza taught me one lesson that I'd share in my keynotes is, every single human being has got a mind. That mind is made up of a personality. The personality is made up of our behaviors. But are made up of our rituals. And so when we want to change any part of our mind, we have to start with a ritual. And when we got these rituals that are going on within our heads moment by moment, from having a Ferrari drive past you and you calling the driver a thief, or to calling him somebody that you want to look up to and respect and can't wait to get into a Ferrari. Not that I want a Ferrari, but you understand what I'm trying to say. That's a ritual. And if you're able to dissect each one of these rituals and see which one energizes you and which one takes energy away from you, and you replace these rituals, over a period of time, you create new habits. And over a period of time, you have a new behavior, a new personality, a new mind. So that's become very helpful for me, because moment by moment, I'm watching my own internal dialogue and understanding the absolute power that they have over my perspective in my life.
Wow.
But I love it. And you know what, now is a good time we start heading on to this. I think this is your book, What's Your Moonshot? What an amazing book. I just want to say thank you. I actually started it on Saturday, and then I was meant to read it yesterday, but we had a massive issue trying to get our latest podcast launch going. So I woke up this morning and I ate it up. I literally ate it up this morning, and that included taking tons of notes. You know what I mean? So for me, it was there was a few things I loved about it, right? First of all, the way it's written is like you were talking to me, and maybe that's just because I'm in a certain space. But the format of it was really cool as well. Just, it might sound like silly things, but the form, the fonts that you use, the way you bolded certain things, you put backgrounds on certain text. It was really, really, really well written. It was, for me, it was like a self-help book crossed with this is how you kind of take your next steps and get out of it. So seriously, man, well done in writing such a great book. I've already got my old man and another mate in South Africa to buy it today. So there you go.
Thank you. You're very kind. Thank you.
No worries, but literally, I read a lot of these books, and this one actually stands out for me. How does this all come about though? Like, it's not, writing a book is a hard thing to do and it takes time. So
Jesus. Talk about delayed gratification. Wow. But you have no idea how it's going to be received. Zero. You have zero. You have no, I mean, the lady who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, she had no idea that one was going to be big. She thought a second one was going to be big, and nobody even bought the second one.
Yeah.
So firstly, thank you. It is supposed to be the holistic approach of micro inspection of ourselves, mega exploration of the world, and macro perspective of what you do with it. Those are the three sectors or segments that I always focus on, whether I'm writing a book or I am giving a keynote or doing a workshop. I always touch on those, because I think if you take any one of those out, you don't have a holistic approach on yourself, the future, and how you're supposed to bring yourself into the future. So it's a mix of self-help and business strategy and futurist sort of framework, and initially my publisher was like, what is this? Where do we put it in the bookshop? Is it a self-help book or is it a business book? And I lean towards the fact that it's a business book with a very strong self-help section, because ultimately what I'm trying to do is get you to take a bigger step in business. Ultimately, what I'm trying to get you to do and get us to do is to believe that as individuals, we have the same power as organizations and governments used to have in previous decades. And we really do. You can create massive, massive businesses with great intention, with having a positive impact on humanity, with 5 people. No more of the days you need a big organization, big power, right? So how did it come about? I knew I had to write a book eventually. I find it very daunting. I found it very daunting to write a book. I mean, who thinks they have 40,000 words in them? And to string them together, there's no way I thought I did. I always was in awe of authors. Like, geez, how? And then I wrote a keynote. I put a keynote together, and the keynote was called Using Language as a Superpower. And I started researching into where does language come from? And I started realizing that, language starts here in our own internal dialogue. And then our internal dialogue is first and foremost brought over with facial expressions, and then into body language, and then into tonality, and then into words. And as I did more of this research, I started applying it to myself and started realizing my own journey with using language. And then I started attaching the future stuff to it. And I built this keynote called What's Your Moonshot? And I started giving it, and people loved it, and I was loving giving it. And I've been working with this lady called Kirsten Molyneux, and her name's on the second page. And she's a very talented and amazing human being. I love her very much. And I said to Kirsten, come and watch. She's a copywriter and a strategist. And I said to Kirsten, come and watch the keynote, please. I think I want to make this a book. So she came and watched the keynotes, and she said, yeah, absolutely. I think you should make it a book. And we got together and we started just mapping out what the book could look like and placing the chapters in place and getting the sub-chapters together. And she said, you know what, John, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write you between 10 and 20 questions per sub-chapter, and I want you to respond to these questions. I said, okay, I think that's a good way, so that she could take on all the answers and then bring them out into a book. I started writing the first few, and I was struggling. So I phoned her and I said, listen, Kirst, I'm struggling writing this. Can I voice note you the answers, and let's see where we can go from there? I voice noted 180 questions, hours, I don't know how many hours of voice notes on WhatsApp. And that's why you feel like I'm talking to you, because I really am talking the book out. And I voice noted the whole book to her, and she sent back sub-chapter by sub-chapter to me. We chiseled it. I made sure all the things were in line, sent it back to her. She chiseled it. Then we sent it to my publisher. He further chiseled it, sent it to me. And this is the hardest part for me, is rereading the same fucking chapter 85 times. I'm like, I just can't. I just don't want to fucking read this anymore.
Oh my God.
And when I did the audible version of the book, it was very painful. But it was the first time I've actually read my book. First time.
Nice.
That's how it works. So basically, you read your own book when people listen to it. Is that how it works most of the time?
No. It depends. I wanted to read it myself for 2 reasons. One, I actually wanted to read my book again. I couldn't read my book again. At the end of it, I was just like, I'm done with it.
You're done.
I read it so many times. And also, I think my voice is quite distinct, and I'm a speaker at the end of the day, and I'm a storyteller, and I wanted to bring that sort of personal touch to it. And a lot of my friends that have listened to it are like, shit, it's amazing. It really does feel like you're talking to us, like I'm having a conversation with you. So, yeah, I did it because I wanted to have it as my own brand and a touch point of who I am.
I think it's really good because I've found that sometimes the narrator or something can cock it up properly as well. So if you're really feeling it and you understand what you're trying to get across with your own content, yeah, I mean there can't be a better way. How did you manage to get? I always find that people that I've spoken to that have written books have always had a sort of a struggle between getting the name that they wanted published, and is that that was the name of your keynote, and it's the name of the book. So tell us about the name a little bit.
The most amazing things happened. I have no idea where it came from. I was typing an email, and I promise you, I just like arbitrarily came. I didn't have like a name, sessioning, nothing. I was just typing, and I was like, what's your moonshot? How big are you thinking? And so the moonshot concept is obviously birthed by JFK, taken on more recently by Google, by Peter Diamandis, by Singularity, and I'm reading that stuff all the time. So it was very much in my psyche. But when I wrote What's Your Moonshot, I immediately looked up the domain. It was there. Nobody had taken it. And I registered the domain, and I don't know, it just happened. And my next book is called Magnetize. And I couldn't get Magnetize, so I've added 2 I's into Magnetize, meaning that you need to know the I behind the I. And
Nice.
Now I own Magnetize as well. And that also just came about.
That's awesome,
Yeah.
man.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I guess just to go into the book a little bit, first 3 chapters about sort of more realizing kind of what you've done, and then also who you are, and then I guess the type of person that you want to get to. So I'm talking about looking at your history, identifying yourself as a victim, how you become a victor. Can you just talk a bit about that in your own words for our listeners, please?
So, the thing with being a petulant victim is that you don't know you're being a petulant victim because you're too busy being a petulant victim. You can't tell a petulant victim you're being a petulant victim. It's the worst thing you could do. It's like pouring petrol onto a fire. And so this hyper self-awareness is required. And that's what ayahuasca was so powerful for, because I needed that slap to wake up. And so there's 3 types of victims. And we often, and I say in my keynote, anybody here a victim? Anybody? Put your hand up. No victims in the audience? Obviously, nobody's a victim. But internally, our dialogues are often victims. And so we get 3 types of victims. 3 that I've suffered from. Maybe there's many more, but these are the 3 that I know. The martyr victim, the poor me, you guys are amazing, please help me. That is the height of narcissism and reverse bullying. A lot of our mothers follow this process. Poor me, you never come and visit me, you never phone me, what the hell? It's all through guilt. Maybe not you guys, but definitely Middle Eastern and sort of European mothers.
You don't want to get us started.
Yo, don't even start on that.
Okay, sorry. I'm glad that it's international. Then you get, and the martyr victim is pretty much the best known one. Everybody thinks that's the martyr. I mean, that's the victim. But you also get the arrogant, inferior victim, somebody that I always use the example of the guy who used to work for me, and he was born into a poor white family and suffered from this poverty consciousness. And he married this very beautiful, wealthy woman, and they moved to Noordhoek in Cape Town, a wealthy area. And I said to him after a couple of weeks of living there, I said, Ivan, how is Noordhoek? And the first thing he said to me was, those bloody mommies and they 4x4, who do they think they are? And I was taken aback by that. But I realized that a lot of us take other people's success and bring it down and almost become brush it away, disgusting. I remember a guy that I know on Facebook was going to Italy on holiday, and he put a picture up on Facebook with his legs spread across his economy seat on the other side. And his caption was, those idiots paying business class tickets, look at me sitting in economy. That's arrogantly inferior, sitting in your victim mindset. Guess what? He's never flying business because he's already made all business people idiots, right? Then you get the arrogant, superior victim, the guy who's always complaining, or the girl that's always complaining about the government and the rand dollar exchange and the potholes and politics and corporates. and everybody are just idiots, and they're all idiots. And that arrogant, superior victim mindset makes people feel that they are powerful, but in fact, they're very powerless, because the idea of complaining has not changed anything at all in any way, because Zuma doesn't care how much you called him a knob, because nothing's changed. All you've done is become angry with him. And so for me, I never get into the idea of complaining. It is it's useless. And also to watch my own dialogue about bringing more successful people down, useless. Feeling sorry for yourself, useless. Doesn't empower you in any way. So become aware of those first. Second, follow Joe Dispenza. Understand that those things can all be changed. It's just a bad habit you've created for yourself. You can use and see how rituals become habits, behaviors, and change your personality. Then understand that the way you perceive the world is everything. So if you perceive the world through inferiority, you have no power. You can't change or move anybody. If you perceive the world through superiority, you have no power. Look at Donald Trump. He has no power. He's so superior. He thinks he's better than everybody else, but he's actually not. He can't move a freaking nobody. Then you get interiority, which is much more like Barack Obama and Nelson Mandela. They have this very equal perspective. They're not trying to be above anybody, but they're also not below anybody. That's when you become ultimately powerful, because then you become elegant in your power. And then you become charismatic and influential, but in an elegant way. And when you become elegant, you're not selling anything ever. What you're doing is inspiring people to move to a better version of themselves, including yourself. When you get into that position, it's ultimately the most powerful position you can be in. And then you start magnetizing things towards you. And that's what my next book is about, is how do you get into the space where things just start happening to you based on your own power dynamics within yourself?
Yes. That is so, it's just amazing that, Gareth and I have spoken about this a lot, but I love the way you discuss that. Like, instead of forcing something to happen, just be that person that just brings the people to you, and instead of forcing something to come of it. And that just makes so much sense. And it's just so much more of a constructive way of living. And just hearing about the victim thing, I mean, how many times no one cares when you complain, when you say, how's your week been? Oh, it's so busy. Like, how everyone says that. I'm super busy. I'm really tired. It's actually no one cares. So I'm going to definitely take that on. It's just such a really good way to look at it.
Yeah, good. I'm glad. The thing for me, Sean Roberts said to me the other day, I said, how is it going? He says, I'm so impatient. It's not happening quick enough. I said, oh, Sean, are you a cub or a lion? Which one are you? Are you a cub? Because cubs are impatient. Lions are elegant. Sitting in the traffic, hooting. Are you a horny teenage boy, or are you coming at this with a sense of power? And so when you start adopting this new perspective, the Rumi's poem rings true. He's got a poem or a line that says, live life as if everything is rigged in your favor. And when you're coming at life with this elegant perspective, everything is perfectly poised for you to create the intention that you have. But now, make no mistake, there's two very clear things you need to be doing in the background. Is you need to be super, super laser focused on your intention. Laser focused. For me, I know exactly how much money I want to earn, what stage I want to be on, who I want to be on stage with, where I want to be talking, where I want to be living, what my future partner looks like. I can tell you everything down to the umpteen detail. That's number one. And an intention, if I give you another way of looking at an intention is like an arrow, a bow and arrow. When you have a goal, it's like an arrow. You pull it back and you put it in tension. And then you have to let the arrow go for it to land in your goal. This is step 2. You need to be so busy following your highest excitement and upping your game, even when other people think what you're doing is foolish, but only because it's your highest excitement. And in that process of you being so consumed with what gets you excited, you let go of where that fucking intention's going. So the fact that I'm a Singularity faculty member, which is by far the most maddest dream for me to be sharing a stage with Peter Diamandis and Ray Kurzweil. I mean, like, from where? How does that even happen? But I was so busy getting my trade to be better, so busy trying to make the next keynote the best keynote I could. I'm getting so busy signing up for expensive courses to make myself better because that's what makes me excited, I forgot about that intention. I literally forgot about it. And there I was in San Francisco meeting Peter Diamandis, getting accepted onto the faculty with him. Because, and so, you know, the elegance comes with work, with structure. You can't just be elegant on the face of it. But when you've got that back end machine and critical thinking and levers being pulled, man, elegance becomes the only way you can come at life.
Yeah, I love that, man. Elegance, such a beautiful way of putting it. And so who do you want to be sharing the stage with? And I mean, just to talk about a little bit as well, like, you know, the forward of your book is by Carl Fussman. I mean, wow, what a man. I read the story about that, how you guys took him for a walk up Devil's Peak, and it's just so cool, you know what I mean? And then not long ago, you were having coffee and breakfast with Larry King of Larry King Live. I mean, who else do you want to sort of meet and be on stage with?
So I want to, and you know, I might, even when I say it, it sounds kind of like bodacious, but I think that's what dreams are about, right? They've got to be bodacious, right? I want to be the headline of the conference where Gary Vee is a second speaker.
Woohoo!
Okay,
yes,
yeah,
that's a moonshot, my man.
Moonshot,
that
indeed.
Is a moonshot, exactly. So I'm really aiming to be sharing a stage with them, to be speaking to a global stage on a global platform, to be a thought leader in that sort of space, but not only for the future, very much about cultivating the mature masculine within us as men. Is what does that look like when we bring that level of consciousness into the world, not as a hippie, but as somebody that's a capitalist, but a conscious capitalist. I'm not moving away from the fact that I want to, you know, fly a jet to the Antarctic and stay there for eight days and have a lavish scenario. And I want that, and I'm going to have that. But how do you create that elegantly? How do you come about that with fierce laser focus with kindness? And it's that sort of, that flavor that I'm going to be bringing in, that I am bringing in with, together with the future studies. Because I think if you don't have both of them, you become a capitalist trying to make money at all costs. And you haven't dealt with your daddy issues. You haven't dealt with your mommy issues. You haven't dealt with any of these issues. And you're acting out like a petulant person. So when you get a multi-billionaire that's still ruining forests to make more money, he hasn't woken up. He hasn't realized what's driving him. And these shadow forces haven't. So for me, the goal is to be sharing that message as far and as wide and as famously as possible. And you know, meeting Peter Diamandis, Ray Kurzweil, Larry King, Carl Fussman, NQ, and all these people has just been happened. I haven't gone out to do any of them. They've just arrived.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's unbelievably elegant the way you've all put that, because it almost seems like too simple, you know, like just be a good person, you know, treat others the way you want to be treated. It seems like the logical way of doing things, but it isn't. Like you said, most of the time it isn't done like that. So I think it's so cool just to see someone that is driven, is like super focused, moving forward. And I think it's a massive role model for people to be kind. Like it's not a hippie thing to be nice to someone else and still say, well, how do we still, you know, exchange a bit of cash and be nice to each other? I think it's a flippin' awesome way to see things, you know.
Thank you. And I just want to say one thing is I'm not kind to everybody. And I think that's what we need to create a distinction here, is that for the longest time, popular sort of media, social media has wanted this idea that we must all be Gandhis and we must all be Mother Teresas. And I don't buy that, because I saw this beautiful thing on Twitter. It said, the world wants you to be vanilla. And the minute you become vanilla, they forget about you. So there has to be this very clear distinction between kindness to the people that require it, deserve it, and are necessary in the space that you're working in, and then an exclusion for the people that don't deserve it and don't need it, because I'm not trying to be Mr. Nice Guy. I'm trying to bring change to the world in my way. And so, trust me, I'm not liked by everybody, and I'm not trying to be liked by everybody. And I don't think that anybody who's got a laser focus on trying to change the world in a certain way, in his own or her own way, is liked by everybody. I think that concept also breaks us and doesn't allow us to bring as much of our light through, you know?
Yeah, really important there. Like, I think, you know, everyone has their kind of tribe. And so let's talk about the future, because the future is Lank exciting, right? I mean, we are living in an era now that's kind of, you know, never sort of obviously happened before, where everything is available to us and anything is possible. I read this amazing book. I don't know if you've read it yourself. It's called Physics of the Future. It's by a guy called Michio Kaku.
Okay. Oh, I know him. Yes, I've seen him on on Discovery.
Yeah. Like, I mean, like nothing, no idea you have is too big, because it's probably been worked on already. I mean, this guy is talking about, like, you know, you talk about it as well, like energy becoming free. He's talking about we're getting energy from stars in the future, you know, and but this is all based on current research and current tests that they're doing. So, I mean, let's talk about the future. What is it about? Why must people get excited about it?
I'm so happy you said that. You know, I think a lot of people wish this future away. And I think that, look at your optimistic way. And I said that right at the beginning, I loved every touch point of your energy coming through just the emails to want to connect. And that's an optimist. That's somebody that's saying, bring it. We're so excited about what's happening. And it is an absolute privilege to be alive right now. I mean, for us to be watching these things happen in front of us, it's mind boggling, you know? And if we're not malleable, we're not optimistic, we're not agile in our way of thinking, of adopting new things, we become bitter and we become almost like forgotten by it, or wish it never happened, right? So the future. Wow. Firstly, it's happening a lot quicker than we realize. We had a lecture from a guy called Dave Roberts, one of the best keynote speakers I have ever seen in my life. I've seen him talk 3 times. He's had 2 standing ovations. Is phenomenal. I can't lie that I've taken a couple of his slides, but he's brilliant. And so Dave Roberts is the chairman. First he was CIA, then he was head of the drone project for the American government. And obviously with the change of president, he felt he couldn't serve that sort of president, so very heart-led. And he's become a keynote speaker for Singularity University, and now the chairman of a company called 1Qubit quantum computing software. And he was talking to us at Singularity, and he said, you know, firstly, let's talk about quantum computing. Quantum computing is billions of times faster than our fastest supercomputer right now. Our fastest supercomputer right now takes football fields of space. A quantum computer is the size of my nail. That's how big it is. It's billions of times. What a quantum computer is going to do is dramatically shift our expectation of computing power. Already, just at the beginnings of us understanding quantum computing, JP Morgan put out a headline the other day that said that we will do in 3 seconds now what used to take lawyers 360,000 hours. 3 seconds, 360,000 hours. And this is only the beginning, right? So that on its own is like, oh my God. And if you think it's out there, it's not. Go to IBM Watson websites. It's open for all of us to play with, okay? Then he comes on, Dave Roberts comes on. He says, we have been trying over the last year to try and balance 2 quantum computers on top of each other, but it's difficult. They need a lot of cooling, blah, blah, blah. He's giving us all the things about it. He says, then we go into this company, and he wouldn't tell us what the company was. And he says, the company that we went into, by mistake, they were trying to solve another problem. By mistake, they've stacked 20 quantum computer chips on top of each other. He says, we were expecting this to happen in 20 years. It's already happened. So the future's coming at us much quicker than we expect. And we've all seen that curve, that exponential curve, right? It goes 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, boom, to 1 billion, right? We are at 6. That's where we are on the curve. We're at 6, meaning we're at between 4 and 8. So what's going to happen over the next little period? We're going to reach 8. And then in the same distance that it took us to get from 4 to 8, it's going to take us from 8 to 16. And in the same period, if not quicker, It's going to go from 16 to 32. So where we are right now is really in the space that it's about to spike, right? And we see that a lot of technologies are sitting. Do you know the 6Ds, the Diamante 6Ds?
Yeah.
Digitize, dematerialize, deceptive, demonetize, democratize, and disrupt. 6Ds.
Yep.
The third D is the one I'm talking about, deceptive. When it becomes digitized, it goes into thin air, dematerializes, then it goes into deceptive, meaning the technology is not quite there yet, and we all think it's gone. 3D printers, it was a fad, never took off. Google glasses, never going to happen. Autonomous vehicles, too expensive. Electric cars, economies of scale aren't there. All of these that I've just mentioned, artificial intelligence, not available, too expensive, not enough people know about it. All of them are deceptive. And so what's about to happen over the next 5 years, every single one of these deceptive ones are going to pop. And as they pop, exactly what happened to Kodak is that Kodak went from printing film to nothing. And that's what's going to start happening to multiple sectors. Lawyers, accountants, and doctors, besides drivers, tillers, packers, I mean, those are obviously going, but even the white-collar jobs, the ones people have studied 10 years for, are disappearing. So the future requires agility. The future requires flexibility. And the future requires us to do two things. One, expose ourselves to the future as much as possible, become comfortable with these notions. Two, create the right mindset. And guess what happens when you do this too? It's a virtuous cycle. The more you expose, the better your mindset. The better your mindset, the more you expose. The more you expose, the better your mindset. And this starts happening where you start going on this upward cycle and becoming friends with the future. So three things in the future that we need to keep our eyes on. One, quantum computing, which is going to change everything really. Everything's going to become a fraction of the size with billions of times more power with a fraction of the power requirement. The second thing is artificial intelligence, which will be the new electricity, will be attached to everything that you can imagine that we have seen with electricity today. And it will replace everything our left brain does. Everything that's logical will be done better. So our left brain will be switched off and we'll only start dealing with the right brain. And Ray Kurzweil said by 2029, we'll all have digital neocortexes implanted, which will give us always on, always access, never losing your memory to all the information ever made. And he says it's an evolution of humankind. And the third thing is blockchain. And this is the things that Singularity were telling us. Those three technologies are going to systematically and dramatically start making a lot of industries totally irrelevant and create a whole bunch of new jobs. But you're only going to be ready for this new future if your mind's right and you're exposed to it, you know? So the future is highly exciting or highly damning. Your choice. Nobody else's.
Wow. And how do you expose, when you say expose yourself to the future, what do you mean by that?
So I tell all organizations I work with, why don't you spend 2 hours from 8 to 10 on a Friday morning watching some TED Talks about the future, some Singularity University lectures, read a blog, go to future laboratory workshops, there's a million of these things out there. You just have to scratch the surface on trends and future, and there's a bazillion websites, a million talks. There's so much of it out there. Just spend 2 hours a week. Actually, you know what? Don't stretch yourself. 1 hour a week. And slowly start getting yourself into the space of exposing yourself more. And, you know, I'll walk out of some keynotes and people come up to me and go, oh, my God, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. How did you get this stuff? I said, you know, I got it from Google. Like where you've got access to it. So now we just have to access ourselves.
You're an optimist, and you like to stay excited and positive about stuff. But what is your thought on AI and you know the doom and gloom of that? What are your thoughts on that?
I think two things. One, we have always made things that are better, stronger, and faster than us. Trucks, they carry much more than us. We're not scared of them. Planes fly much further. In fact, they fly and we don't. We've done this beyond in past times. Secondly, depending on what we input into the computers, that's how they're going to be reacting, right? And if you look at the Jack Ma interview, he says that the difference between machines, computers, and humans is knowledge versus wisdom. It says machines will always have more knowledge, but they'll never have wisdom. And to get to the question of this sort of AI taking over and becoming evil, I truly am not an expert in AI. I can't give you an answer that I would imagine as deep and well thought out as Ray Kurzweil could or as Elon Musk could. And both of them are very relevant answers, and they're both dramatically opposite. So again, I mean, I'm hoping for the best, and I hope that there isn't a tipping point towards it going that way. But, you know, humanity has done some horrific things in the past. I don't know what's going to happen. You know, I have no idea. I'm going to keep focusing on what I want to happen, because I really truly believe that our reality is our focused attention. And the more we focus on something, the more energy and the more power we give it. And I think it's necessary for us to be able to give that focus, watching it, but keep giving the focus to what we want rather than what we don't want.
And John, what does a day in a human look like, say, in 5 years' time, in the near future? How different is it to now?
I think the one dramatic thing that could happen is ambient intelligence, is where already, you know, your calendar, your Waze will message you the night before to tell you what time you should leave to get to your appointment at your first calendar entry.
Yeah.
That's called ambient intelligence. And that's just going to increase at a massive pace, where we will have our carpet in our bedroom speaking to the 3D printer in our kitchen, telling it what tablet to print based on the minerals that are missing in our body, measured by the carpet in our bedroom. This ambient intelligence with AI becoming the new electricity is really going to start impacting every touch point of our lives. We're going to be thinking less about the mundane bullshit, and we're going to be starting to apply ourselves into more humanity, right brain stuff. So I don't know if it's 5 years, I don't know when it's going to be, but I think that artificial intelligence is really going to start becoming the norm for us to start acting and interacting with our world very differently. You know, we don't need to memorize phone numbers anymore. Nobody does. We don't need to memorize directions anymore. Nobody does. No, we don't need to do any of these things, and we take them for granted, you know. Whereas before, you'd had to memorize a phone number. So slowly but surely, AI is integrating into our lives. We just don't realize that it is. And so if you've used Google Maps, that's artificial intelligence telling you where to go based on measurements and sensors and that sort of thing. So that becomes more ubiquitous, and it gets included in your cup. Your cup tells you how much water you've drank throughout the day and connects that to your health map, and your health map connects that to your doctor. And so all these ambient intelligence scenarios, I think, is going to be the major shift as we move forward. Also, technological socialism, this idea that technology is making many things free around us. So we were going to start seeing the advent of a lot more free things around us. And first and foremost, obviously, is communication and energy. Those two, I think, will become free before any of the other ones will become free.
Yeah, but it's I must say, I'm just Lank pumped about the future. But I also think it's really, really interesting because there's so much to look forward to in the future, but also people are really looking back now, like in humanity, into our history, at our roots, and like we're exploring both sort of ends of the ranges, you know what I mean? So people are like now going back into meditation and, you know, like taking ayahuasca or whatever, and doing this, like cupping, for example, you know, these things that were done for centuries and centuries ago. People are now exploring, but in the same time, there's so much going on in the future. So it's a really cool like time to be around because we also have access to that information.
I think that's what it is. I think it's becoming accessible to understand how these ancient tribes used to do things. If you think about it, where would you hear about these things before? You know, now we're getting access to them, you know. So I think it's just consciousness, you know, the birth of consciousness, and the sort of idea that feminine consciousness is starting to take over the world, and we're starting to celebrate gentleness, collaboration, kindness. In a man's world, those are sissy, little girl things. Stop doing that. It's about brute force. It's about direct power. That's become almost like disgusting. And look what's happening around the world. Look at the Me Too hashtag. Look at all these sexual predators being like exposed. This is consciousness. This is hyper transparency that this new world of technology is bringing for us, and our real ability to become responsible for our lives and not relying on these governmental institutions or religious institutions that were so dogmatic about the way we used to live. And really the decentralization of power is starting to happen, where we're starting to expose our own or access our own power as human beings with the help of teacher plants and technology and meditation and all of these scenarios. I think all of it's a beautiful orchestra that's really starting to merge into this, I think, an incredible dreamlike future, because also as you start moving more into your power, your reality gets created quicker. It's really like, it's happening like a snap of time speeding up. So your intentions are happening quicker, and so are your shitstorms. They're all happening quicker. So we're becoming really clear about what are you intending and what you're putting your energy into and what are you putting your focus onto.
I think it's really exciting that we're moving full circle and becoming more. And I think we're going to have to use some of that. You pretty much nailed like what our podcast's about. A lot of it is like, we're just moving towards what makes us all really human, like what is that? And that's the real stuff that we should be focusing on. And the other stuff, like you say, is going to be commoditized. But the real humanness of each of us is the stuff that's so special, and we need to celebrate that, so that's, really well put.
Yeah, thank you. And I get that. I get that from your podcast. And just from the few things I've seen, it's to be ridiculously human. It's like, how much more of a human can you be, and how much to the core of who you are can you be? How much can you remember how awesome you are?
Yeah.
Without being arrogant, and I think I get pumped on it because it fuels me to bring my dreams into fruition. It fuels me to get onto stage and give it a go to an audience that is hungry to try to think differently, and they're tired of the same bullshit. They're tired of quarterly profit targets. All organizations are doing it and all of them are hating it. What's the point?
But flip, man, I'm pumped right now. I'll tell you what,
let's go watch. I was going to say, where can we go watch you on the stage, man?
Yeah. So look, thanks so much, man. Like, before we wrap things up, just what what do you do now these days just to kind of like escape? Like, or actually, no. Before we go there, one of the things I wanted to ask you is like your life now is pretty much flying around, talking, doing keynote speeches. How do you prepare for these? Like, are you the type of guy that literally kind of, you see what the subject is, you understand who the audience is you're talking to, and you're like, cool, this is what I need to talk about? Or do you do much prep? Do you have anyone helping you? How does it work?
So I have 9 people around me that work as freelancers around the world. I have research people, digital people, social people, copywriters, accountants, PA. I got a whole bunch of people, and I get a brief from a client. And if I don't have the required the research that I need, if I haven't done it already, if I don't know about the subject, I send that to my research team. My research team researches it under the way I need it researched, because I use a framework. That research comes back to me. I look at what I want to use and what stories resonate with me. I then break it down into a presentation, a very rudimentary presentation. I send that off to my digital people. My digital people understand my brand, how I want things set up, how I need things done. They send back to me a presentation in about 2 days with all the keynotes or key points that I wanted. Then I start merging it into the plethora of slides that I have. And I start building the theme and the story of what I'm trying to get that audience to walk away with based on the brief. But often I change the brief. Often the brief that the clients give me is broken because they're asking a question within their paradigm. And what I'm there to do is stretch their paradigm. So what I have to do first and foremost is stretch their question. And so what I do is stretch that question and then bring in a story through this keynote based on the team helping me so I can start delivering them. Some days, some weeks, I'm doing 6 or 7 keynotes a week. I don't have time to put the presentations together or the research. So I have these people doing it so that I can bring these sort of fluidity to me putting these keynotes together. But I got to tell you, man, it's by far the most exciting thing for me to do, to arrive at a conference, 2,000 people, I'm the keynote, I've arrived, people are excited that I'm there. It's like you're a little rock star, right? It's a mad energy, and people are expecting you. They've checked you out on site, on the net, they've read your book, and you get on stage and you crack it because that's what you just love doing. And I've got a very clear tone when I'm on stage. I'm like this, but I'm extremely warm. I'm extremely friendly, but I've got a big fuck you behind that because I'm like, wake the fuck up. But I've got to do that in a calm way, right? And I'm often told I'm not allowed to swear. And halfway through, I'm swearing, and the audience are loving it. And the organizers afterwards are saying, thank goodness you swore, because I just added the thing to it. But it's about building that trust. It's about building that humanity with the audience, get them to understand that I've been bankrupt, I was a victim for so long. I know what that's like. But let me show you some people that are not victims. Let me show you what they did. Let me show you how you can do it. Let me show you what's going on in the future. Let me show you what this means for leadership. And people leave pumped and scared. And I think you need to be both, because you need to be slightly scared to want to switch any of your actions, And so I don't have time to always do the research and always do the presentations. And man, nothing excites me more than arriving at that place, cracking it, signing some books and leaving, it's a rush.
Yeah, so I'm just pumped hearing you, man. That's so exciting. And I think that there's a sort of a fine line between excitement and that fear. And I think that's a good place to be. And that's and I must just say, you're talking about your team. I just love the way Louise, who helps out with you, one of your team members, great team members, she signs off John's left brain, and I just think that's one of the coolest things I've ever seen. It's so cool.
I dislike accountant. My accountant's the coin queen, and I really dislike personal assistant. Left brain is perfect because I really have switched off my left brain.
Beautiful.
So I wanted to give a name or a description that was fun. It's just we're having a light heart. We're serious, but we're also having a little bit of a stab at the status quo. And also, I've chosen my team very carefully. Each one of them are global thinkers. Louise travels constantly around the world. She's in Canada, then she can't talk to me because it's sleep time there. Then she's in Yugoslavia. I don't know. She's all over the place. And I love that. And she's got 2 or 3 other clients, which I love as well, because it gives her fluidity and her brain a lot of movement. So, and she's English, and she has that sort of global perspective. My accountant has lived in New York and in London, and I've handpicked the team to share the same global perspective as me, so that when we start talking about Euro bills, paying into PayPal accounts, it's all normal. I don't have a poppy accountant that lives in Durbanville or in Boxburg because they charge this. That shit. I don't like it.
Oh, classic poppy. That's such a kiff word, isn't it? Yes, I love it.
In Durbanville.
Kiff is also such a kiff word.
Yeah.
It's the best word, man.
Sorry, but I know, like you probably do have to go, and we really so appreciate your time. Just also quickly tell us a little bit about Rise of the Nation. That's a international, or like a South African speaking organization where you get in like international speakers.
So since I have dismantled it, and I'll tell you why, I just didn't have the time. But what happened was I went to a conference called State of the Nation, and it was so depressing. And I just thought, we got to be able to do a better job. We got 1,000 corporates in the room. We can't be telling them all the negatives about the country. And guess what? The whole world has got negatives. So now what? We're going to just keep hitting on, it's a South African favorite pastime. Just like, keep talking shit about your country. Keep talking shit about your country. Get over it already. It's boring. It's actually boring to hear about that stuff. So let's start talking about a conference that's called Rise of the Nation. How do we start not ignoring the problems, but how do we highlight the opportunities within the problems and also highlight the winners that have been able to do things amazingly in this environment? So we did have one conference. It was amazing. It was awesome. But then I really started getting busy and started, traveling around the world. And for me, that's my highest excitement rather than putting an event on. But it's very much close and dear to my heart to get people to see the world in a different way, in an optimistic way. So whether I'm doing it with a conference like Rise of the Nation or my book or my keynote or my workshops, every single touch point of mine has got the same sort of nuanced energy to it to say, hey, wake up, think like this, like change your perspective. So Rise of the Nation, unfortunately, I've kept the website, I've kept the Facebook page, I've kept all of that. And I'm just giving a bit of time to breathe, and then we'll see when it can come back.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Totally, man. And so where can people get hold of you? Obviously, I mean, you're going around the world, but in terms of social media, what platforms you're on, what's your handle, etc.
So I'm so lucky. I'm the only John Sanei in the world. Out of 7 billion people, there are no other John Saneis.
Nice.
So I'm on all the social medias on John Sanei. Please reach out. Obviously, social media is such a. I got asked this question. A conference in the States was booking me, and they said, please fill in these following things. How many YouTube views have you had? How many followers do you have? I mean, that was the questions that they were having, and it's vitally important. It shows reach. It shows influence. So yes, I'd love for people to follow me on my social media handles, and I follow back, and I like engaging. And Gary Vee taught me that in one of his videos. He says, respond to everybody that messages you because it's social media, motherfucker. Social. That's the point.
Yes, I must say he is one of my inspirations for sure. Actually, Craig introduced me to him probably about 3 years ago, bud, when we were at your house for Christmas in Holland. Yeah. And he's like, you've got to watch this, Oak. And literally since that day, I've been hooked. And I went to go see him speak here in London. He spoke at a boxing arena. And he just brings it in. Everything. I mean, I just love him. You know what I mean? He's like you, bud. He just says it straight. And he brings an energy which is so important. And it gives people hope. Because I think hope is so important.
Yeah, I think he's awesome, man. I think he's got his own issues, and so do I. And we've got our own sort of little levels of arrogance. And I think it's necessary to have that sort of level because you're getting up and trying to get 8,000 people to think differently. Yeah. You got to have some sort of chutzpah inside you. But I think he's awesome. And I think he's trailblazed more than anybody else this notion of business celebrity. And it's this sort of trailblaze that I'm following with him to create this idea of being a business celebrity, to have the status of celebrity, but because of business and because of teaching a new way of thinking. Tony Robbins has done it in the sort of self-development place, and you've got these other guys doing it. But, Malcolm Gladwell and Seth Godin never did it like Gary. Gary's taken it to another level.
Yeah, he has.
Yeah, man, totally. and we can't wait to watch. We'd love to watch Gary Vee open up for you on stage. So we look forward to that day, and we'll definitely we'll make sure we're going to be there.
I saw you go, woo, big boy. I love that because that's a challenge for me. And that's an audacious goal, man. It's an audacious intention for me to put up. You know where I got that from? This is such a great, I highly recommend everybody in the whole world watch this. There's a documentary about Richie McCaw called Chasing Greatness. And it's about the All Black captain. And do yourself a favor, please watch it. It's unbelievable. I'm not a sports fan, but him as a human being is incredible. And when he was 10 years old, he said to his uncle said to him, what do you want to be when you grow up? He says, I want to be an All Black player. He says, is that all? He says, what do you mean, is that all? He says, why don't you try and aim to be the greatest All Black player of all time? Oh. He's like, okay. So he started signing GAB every time he put his intentions down before a match, like all the things he wanted in the match, and then GAB, greatest All Black ever. Or greatest All Black. And look what happened to him.
Wow, that's
the greatest All Black ever. And it's that audaciousness of intention that sometimes you don't even want to think yourself it's okay. It's like, no way. That couldn't be.
Fear, excitement.
Why not? I don't know. Yeah. Why wouldn't it be okay,
Yeah.
Well, I must say, if you can be this inspiring, it's late here in Australia, and I'm like, there's no ways I'm going to have a good night's sleep tonight. I'm just so pumped from hearing you. Sorry. So no, it's really, really good. I just wanted to say from my side as well, just thank you so much. We really, really do appreciate your time. People that are sowing seeds of hope and excitement. I mean, there should just be more people like you. So I'm just really grateful. And yeah, just everybody listening is just, I think, going to get so much value out of listening to you. So thanks again. And we look forward to seeing where your next book as well coming out. That's going to be awesome.
Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, but and for me as well, I just want like a massive thank you too. First of all, just for actually kind of agreeing to come on the podcast. You kind of, like, it's just so nice of you, because there's like I don't want to say like a hierarchy or whatever, but some, like we look at you and you're like, wow, it would be amazing to have this guy come on, and then you agree to it, and you're such a normal guy. You know what I mean? You have a flippin' awesome story to tell. You tell it with such amazing energy, and you give people so much hope and inspiration. And seriously, that is what being ridiculously human is all about. You know what I mean? And we're just Lank thankful for it, and we absolutely wish you all the best in everything. And we literally can't wait to meet you in person someday, and also
definitely
be in the front row of one of your keynotes, because that'll just be
Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you so much. I'm coming to Australia. I've been booked with 2 conferences for 2018.
Yes.
And London, I'm aiming to come in January. So I'll let you guys know as minute I
let us know. We'll be there. Sweet.
Okay, awesome. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks,
Thank
buddy.
you so
Have an
much,
awesome
my man.
day, man.
Thanks a lot,
Take
bud.
care.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You.
Cool, man.